Let's make a few autumn reading plans. Greetings, my name is Nina. Welcome back to my channel. I do not make seasonal reading plans anymore because I do not like to limit myself, but this time I decided to do that. This video is going to be very short because I did not pick too many books that I want to read. Let's go straight to the books. There are two books that I knew for sure that I wanted to read in autumn, and I am in the process of reading these books. So the first is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. The internet convinced me to pick up this book. I only read 18 pages so far. I sense that I'm reading something really cool. And I also really like this edition. I think most of you have seen those edits on the TikTok with this book and the autumn aesthetics. I need to confess that I did fall for that. Partially, because I can't be convinced to read a book based on aesthetics alone, and I decided to give this book a chance. And this is the book that I bought in May, and I knew that I was going to read it in autumn. Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. This is my fourth time reading Lord of the Rings books. I just couldn't walk past this edition. Well, mostly because in Russian I have the first book in a very different translation, whereas book 2 and 3 are in the same translation as this whole volume. I have already read 122 pages. When I was reading the books in English, it took a while to read this. However, in this translation, I'm reading the books quite fast. And to be honest, this is kind of the reason why I like this translation. It's Muravyov-Kistyakovsky, otherwise known as Kistyamur, aka the last names shortened and united. I checked my reading list app on my phone and I found out that I finished Return of the King last year on September 17th. And around in May, I knew that I wanted to read the books again. The Lord of the Rings books are the books that I'm going to read again and again, not going to get bored. I'm gonna confess to you that because of the films, it is hard for me to perceive Lord of the Rings as a book series. In my mind, the Lord of the Rings are mostly the films. For a very long time, I did not have access to the books, and I watched films a lot of times. But I'm fixing that. I'm reading the books, and yeah, it's going on very well. I decided that I wanted to reread more books. Fact about me, I like rereading a book every few years. This time I decided to reread Equal Rights by Terry Pratchett. So this is the first book in the Witches series. Discworld is a series which is divided into sub-series. This is how I understand it. I named the first book one of my favorites, but I need to confess that I do need to revisit the book to realize if it's still my favorite. I'm glad that it's quite small. Unfortunately, I did not find the rest of the series in a physical copy. However, I found the Kindle edition and I have the rest of the books on my Kindle. Speaking of a physical copy, it's autumn and gonna confess to you, I'm in the mood to read some Friedrich Nietzsche. So I said that I planned to read The Wheel of Power. Well, here it is. I said that I wanted to read The Wheel of Power, but recently I found The Birth of a Tragedy out of the spirit of the music, and gonna be honest, I want to read this one more. It's smaller, but I also want to go through Wheel of Power. Alongside this book, I also bought Beyond Good and Evil. And there's also another book by Nietzsche I want to read, and it's Twilight of the Idols. Gonna confess to you, I read Nietzsche, but I do not always understand his ideas. I do not always get them. I need multiple rereads to do that. And obviously, I do not always agree with him, but nonetheless, his books are very interesting to read, and there are things to think about. And finally, I also have my Kindle. In August, I was away for summer vacation, And I kept reading The Murder Bot Diaries by Martha Wells. I read the first four books, but I haven't read books 5 and 6. After I got all the 5 books on my Kindle, I found out that there was also a sixth one. And also, there's another book that I'm currently reading. However, I need to finish it. I found out about the book from watching the book Leo, and it's a psalm for the Wild Build by Becky Chambers. It's a very short book, but it took time for me to read that book. I still haven't finished it, and I know that there's a sequel to that book, and I have it on the Kindle. To be honest, reading a psalm for the Wild Build and the Murder Bird Diaries at the same time gave me a perspective. These books have a bit a similar premise about a robot, or at least one robot, that was programmed to do something, but then gained consciousness. But the Murder Bot Diaries are action-packed, whereas a psalm for the Wild Build, mostly a dialogue. So if you read a psalm for the Wild Build, I do recommend reading the Murder Bot Diaries. But in general, I recommend the Murder Bot Diaries. Oh, and there are a few yearly plans. I planned the 10 books for the year. I do not like to plan too much. And I can tell you that I read 5 and I dumped one. So I have 4 books left. So I have Foundation by Isaac Asimov to read. I also have God, Emperor of Dune by Frank Herbert, The Will to Power by Nietzsche, and the 4th book is Earthsea by Ursula K. Le Guin. I think I'm going to take Earthsea during a winter time. And Foundation and God Emperor of Dune I will try to read in autumn. If not, then gotta get to read them next year. Anyway, that's all. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. See you next time. Goodbye.